going to be covering the Celestial Renegade that we run. Start by covering the traits. We run Invocation, Devastation, and Renegade. Invocation we run mostly for the energy swap, but you get Fury whenever you swap Legend. You give yourself stability and more heal whilst on break. Really, any of those is actually fine. They're not massively thing, it's just the extra stability is pretty good. And then you just do a bit of extra damage with Fury. Pretty important trait is when you swap Legend, you'll be giving boons dependent on which Legend. So we run Dwarf and Demon. When you switch to Demon, you get resistance. When you switch to Dwarf, you get stability. It's just one stack, but it's like decent and it applies to allies. Not really worth running either of the other two. You get energy whenever you break a stun. Can be some, it's not a huge amount. You'll always spend more, but it makes some skills slightly cheaper. And then from with the Grandmaster, we run the energy swap on low energy. When you go beneath 10%, you'll get an extra 25, taking you up to 75 on your Legend swap. Okay, and then Devastation, you just get some vulnerability. Your movement skills grant resistance. This is quite a bit of self-resistance. Neither of the other two really add much, though kind of fine choices. Another small damage increase. You pulse Fury. Neither of the other two add enough. That's just 50% Fury uptime for just being in combat. Some extra damage, not too important. The main trait that you run the build for is Brutality. Brutality means whenever you weapon swap in combat, you'll be getting quickness, and whenever you have quickness, it doesn't have to be from the weapon swap. You'll be removing 1 stack of stability per target per second. Makes your pulsing damage skills very good. And then neither of the other two work because we're filling more of a utility role. Renegade, we don't run the Renegade Legend, just doesn't have enough value over these two. You get access to a buff which just increases your damage, makes you slightly more tanky. It's nothing to focus on. Which one you pick affects how you get it. We go for the bottom because it provides more boons. So when you dodge, you give resolution and regeneration. This can add up quite a lot of cover boons. And just whenever you crit, you'll be granting Fury, so you should have really good uptime between those two traits on their own, and it's pretty passive. We run Bleed, does more damage. This isn't a massively powerful trait, but you do put out quite a lot of bleed. You could also run giving yourself resistance on the heal skill. And then we're not using Kalia, so protection isn't worth it. That just gives you more endurance. Then out of these, we go for the bottom one, which is Alacrity. Each one is just tied to a different skill. This is your F4, this is your F2, and this is your F3. Mostly care about Alacrity. We'll be getting some quickness from Firebrands, some from our Spellbreakers, but most of your quickness is probably going to come from your own weapon swaps. Well, we don't really have many Chronos. If you have a Chrono in your party, they should be giving you more quickness than anyone else, because they have no reason to run Alacrity if they're with a Renegade. Equipment, we run full Celestial stats on everything, and Runes of Leadership, which is Celestial and 25% boom duration. Around 80% you'll be comfortably able to just maintain your F4. It'll have the same cooldown as its Alacrity uptime. We run Mace, and you can run Axe or Sword, and then we run Shortbow. Main reason we run Mace main hand is because its 2 is a pulsing field, which will provide a lot of brutality stacks, and then you have 2 casts of your 3. Axe 5 pulls to center, which is more CC pressure, and it's a decent range. The sword would still be Celestial, be immobilized from the 4, and the damage is quite high. In terms of sigils, Absorption and Nullification, by running both you lose the priority from Steel, because Absorption's internal priority gets overwritten by Nullification. Just run that on both weapon sets. For our relic, we run Herald. Herald gives you concentration for all of your boons, because all our boons are pulses or massive target counts. It's very easy to maintain 10 stacks of Herald. Yeah, Agility is another good choice for quickness. Currently, I'm not sure if it's a bug, which is why I don't like recommending it, but you can run Relic of Warrior, because the internal cooldown on Brutality doesn't trigger. With Warrior, that'll reduce your weapon swap to 6 seconds, and that means your quickness uptime on yourself will easily be about 70%. It can be much higher. overall I'd say run Herald, just because it feels like it's a bug that the ICD on Warrior doesn't work. And that's the ICD on the quickness application. The strip does work. As a Renegade, you have your energy mechanic, which is a lot of overhead to try and maintain, and you pick 2 skill sets that you switch between based on your subclass. Gives you access to a unique one and the different special skills. This is Renegade, you have your F2, which grants allies might and gives you back your Kalia's favor, which is the damage buff and reduction. We don't use this that often overall, mostly just use it to deplete energy to trigger our increase. We have your F3, they changed slightly so it now targets in a really small area compared to before. It's reflectable, so it's bad skill to use in any kind of fights where they'll reflect, but it does a lot of damage and burn onto siege, so you can destroy oil cannons very quickly with enough renegades. And the big skill at the moment that's like the main justification behind Renegades, combined with a bunch of the rest of the kit, is the fact that you have permanent alacrity uptime with your F4. The way your F4 works is you cast it while you have the circle around you, you'll be pulsing the alacrity. So if you leave or get too far from somebody, they won't get the alacrity. The pulsing lasts for 6 seconds. So if I stand here, they have some, and then I move away, they'll miss 2 pulses from this. It means their alacrity won't be 100% uptime. Once the circle's gone, you're not going to pulse it anymore, so you can bury it. To achieve that, you need 75%. It's more comfortable with 80% boom duration, which the build should easily reach. You should actually overcap it slightly. Those skills don't change regardless of legend. Then your weapon skills have basic auto attack, it stacks some condis, which can actually do a decent amount. The projectile on the auto attack 3 is reflectable. Then the 2 is good, it's a fire field, so you can blast it for area might. It pulses 4 times. Also stacks burning on them, so it can be a lot of pressure, but mostly you'll be using it in combination for brutalities or to stack might at the start, because you can detonate it twice with your 3. Your 3 is a movement skill, so it grants you resistance. It gives the enemy weakness and torment, which are both very good with how much you'll be stacking. It hits 9 targets overall on the cast. As of patch not too long ago, it became a single blast, whereas before it was 3. Good skill, you can get a lot of brutality value out of this. On sword, your 4 is immobilize, and then everybody you hit increases the immobilize, so you can end up getting a pretty long thing. It's 3 targets, does actually quite high damage overall. Your 5 is going to kill you, but it can be useful. It's just shadow steps. Main advantage is you can use it out of range, so you can use it if you get banished and there's an enemy in your group. You can use your 5 to get back. Your dwarf skills, your 4 removes 5 conditions and grants resolution. It's really low energy cost. It's 1 second to recover. You can use it pretty safely without worrying about affecting your energy too much. Then you have vengeful hammers. This is unblockable, 3 hammers, each capable of hitting 5 targets for 15 targets a second potentially, if you're stood right in the middle of them. As you activate it, your energy drains instead of recovers, so you can use this to easily stay beneath the 10% or to drain the last little bit. Next skill is a long duration taunt and slow, so long as they're within range, and single target you take less damage. Don't really use it in Zerg because it's just too much energy for its value. Then the main skill is Inspiring Reinforcement, also known as Roads. This is a very good skill because it's 5 separate components, which means you're going to give 25 stacks of stability that pulse as you drop it. Each section as they drop can hit 5 targets. So with brutality, you can strip 25 stab while giving up to 25 stab a second pulsing and its weakness. And then your elite skill is 50% damage reduction that doesn't affect conditions. We're not traded for it to affect conditions, but you can. Uses a huge amount of energy and breaks stun. Overall, it's rare to use unless you're just about to swap legend and for some reason have loads of energy, or if like you're going for an initial push, you can use it. Switching to demon, the heal just heals you more from conditions, it doesn't cleanse it. Banish enchantments, this is 30 energy, it's completely unblockable and pierces, chills and strips 3 boons from each target, so there's up to 15 completely unblockable strips. If you're struggling with terrain, because it does just draw a line, you can jump it on the cast. This skill is very good and adds up very quickly on number of strips, got a very low no cooldown. Then you have Call to Anguish. This is a pretty strong pull. It applies chill on the pull. It's also elite, and its movement skill. It pulls 5 targeting in a large area to the center. Or without stability, you can get people and pull them straight onto a lot of damage. Really high energy cost to use free, but then when pushing, go in if you're going for a full commit, pull them in and get them in a lot of damage that way. Don't overextend on it, know your positioning. Then the final skill, or the elite, is Pain Absorption. This transfers conditions from your allies onto you. It's a transfer, so it's flagged as a cleanse for all other mechanics like antitoxin and everything. Means you can remove 5 and transfer 5 at the same time. Means you can actually get decent cleanses. It gives resistance, resolution, and break stun. For the energy, I generally only use it as a reactive button, so if I see somebody's getting stuck behind, I'll trigger it. One thing to note is the resistance you apply to your allies is half what you apply to yourself. No tooltip, no mention of that. It's just something internal. Your elite, this is the demon energy drain. You activate it, you now have a dark aura around you for all the advantages. Every single blast and leap you'll trigger with a dark aura. And then you post torment. Mostly it's just useful to get your quickness to trigger. Most things reflect within the area they're in. So like domes, if you cast a skill and it doesn't immediately hit the person, it will still reflect. If it's not a full dome, you'll hit the floor before the dome, then it'll detonate and the blast will hit the siege. Basic, just ranged auto attack, its projectile gets reflected, and your 2 just shoots a bunch of projectiles from different directions. Requires a target. It can allow you to get past things like Dragon Hunter blocks and stuff because they're directional. They won't stop the projectile behind. But again, then your 3 is quite a lot of damage overall, stacks a lot of condi, still projectile problems. The 4, which is almost the entire reason you run shortbow, yeah, you can plan around. This is another pulsing damage. It applies slow and burn. Takes for a lot. It's very strong skill overall, and it can trigger brutality on every pulse. 5 is knockback and more burn. It's not a projectile, so you can use that more freely. Double stability pressure when combined with quickness. The quickness needs to be active while the damage ticks through, not before. So if you drop 4 and then get quickness, the pulses after will still trigger brutality. There's a small trick you can do, because if you right click and swap, it doesn't energy and stuff. So to pre-stack your pain absorption, you can just swap your legends by right clicking on them. You can go to your other one and then just trigger. That's 20 seconds on me, so about 10 seconds on your allies. Costs no energy, and if you're swapping between your 2 legends, there's no real risk of getting into combat. Like when you're stacking and everybody else is doing mighting, blasting fire fields and power, swiftness and stuff, you can be stacking your resistance. And the other thing is your F4 should pretty much always be on cooldown, because if a warrior dropped a banner, they have 120-second cooldowns. So while you're out of combat, because your energy can't go above 50 but regenerates to 50 extremely quickly, you can just freely cast your F4. And by having both of these going, means you can enter combat with more effective energy rather than having to start by spending all of your energy on boons. And just remember, you need to be within range of your allies for the first 6 seconds of your F4. You've been maintaining your alacrity, you might have stacked resistance, it depends on the fights and how much time you have to stack and everything. But then as you're getting into combat, I usually start on shortbow and usually start on demon. The reason I do this is because at 900 range you can shoot once to just enter combat. Once you do that, you'll get your quickness. You can cast your 4 straight away. As soon as it finishes, you can weapon swap there. So you then have the pulsing brutality triggering from the quickness of your 4, and you're in demon so that you can combine a banish enchantment onto it. Means you can get your initial strips, which will also become unblockable with the quickness. This is like generally how I open into most fights. Now that I'm in combat, energy can stack to 100. You can pre-enter combat to do that, but you have the movement speed debuff. The other thing is start in dwarf, go to demon. Your road, you generally want to cast this as often as possible. So your F4 and dwarf road should be on cooldown pretty much as often as possible, but you can get the 25 stab strip from this. As soon as it starts dropping, you can weapon swap, get pulses, so everybody in, or 25 people in a squad, because it takes time for the final segments. The first segment you'll miss pretty much every time, but the others trigger. It's any time or any source of damage you can output. It checks on the actual tick the damage is applied whether you have quickness. Then if you do, it triggers brutality. You can get quickness halfway through a skill cast and get the benefit, which allows you to save a lot of time. While you're at range, you either open on dwarfs and 4 and then go for the weapon swap, or you can open on mace and go for the 2, but the 4's further range and more damage on a range spike. Generally, I treat the 4 kind of as a Wells cool or brutality. Anybody in it gets stuck. The more renegades you have, the more effective brutality is. Start with beginner renegade rotation, which is to not worry too much about demon and weapon swapping. Just on cooldown, drop your roads, try and get your allies and the enemies in the roads a bit to apply the weakness and stability. You're not weapon swapping. The main thing is just keep making sure you have roads and alacrity on cooldown. This is a huge amount of stability just given to your squad and your alacrity, and you will always have energy if you press nothing else. The main focus, I would say, for a starter renegade, nothing else matters as much as those two. Once you're slightly more comfortable, you start adding in the weapon swaps and their major skill. On mace, you'll be casting your 2 and you'll be going the energy, and then you'll have your short bow 4, which you'll still be doing roads and alacrity. Once you're comfortable with just getting these weapon swaps in to add some brutality on top, then that's when you fun. Be times where you have to delay the cast because of your energy income. The next step is just to start swapping your weapon as often as you can. It's just the pulses you care about, so you're gonna mace 2 and do short bow 4. That's the only skills while you're doing this. Once you're comfortable with all of this, you start using demon. When you swap to demon, if you're above 50%, you'll get set to 50%. This is the case for all legends. But the goal here is just to get into demon for the energy boost, trying to, if possible, get your alacrities into demon here. And then you just banish enchantment, keep the 4. As soon as you have dwarf ready, you swap back out and go to your previous thing. That's like the next step up or getting used to renegade, because as a renegade you have so many timers you're on. You have a 9-second timer on your legend swap, you have another 9-second timer on your weapon swap for your quickness, which is on itself 6 seconds. So you're trying to fit a lot of these timers, and then every 20 seconds you need to recast, actually like 16 seconds, because alacrity reduces the skill to 80% of its cast time. While you're getting used to it, it's just add in 1 step each time until you're more comfortable with the timers. When you're fully comfortable with it, you start adding in your drains. Here I can trigger my drain. I will have my legend swap before. Guarantees that I go up to 75% energy, which is essentially a free cast of other skills. With the breaks done, it's a full free pain absorption. Call to Anguish works through gates, and there's some walls you can actually pull. Just use it as a gate pull for the radius, because if they're going for a counter bomb, like, you can go here. Anybody on rams will pretty much get pulled in and spiked. Yeah, if you're running axe, you can use axe 5 as well. As I've been looking through the logs, the main things I notice are people using pain absorption too often. Like, double casting it isn't going to help that much. Better off generally just getting the single cast and then going for putting pressure on the enemies, rather than just trying to sustain infinitely, because we should have resistance coming from our firebrands as well. And if we still have bindies, they would be applying some, Chronos would be applying some. We do run lower on resistance, so we should use it occasionally. People don't weapon swap anywhere near enough. That's just free brutality, and overall which weapon you're in doesn't matter that much, because if you're in short bow, you can just drop your short bow 4 anywhere. It'll pulse its strips. It'll put a lot of brutality pressure, and your 5 will grip, stab, and knockback. It's 2 separate triggers. That means it can remove 2 stab. If we have 5 renegades who all sync their 4 into the right place, that's a full stand your ground that's just gone on that group. Not enough roads. People using forced engagement. The other thing is just when things are used, every weapon swap should have one of your pulsing fields go down, or roads. Dwarf is very rare that the energy is worth it, because we're in a celestial meta, which means the strike damage isn't going to be as important to spend that much energy on it. And then enough F4s. One thing to note is while your F4 is in those initial 6 seconds, it's pulsing alacrity, which will push alacrity on top for like strips and corrupts and things. So sometimes it'll get corrupted into chill, makes it a lot harder to maintain while you're just doing nothing. You should still be pressing F4. Useful tip, each arrow is energy, income, or cost. So when you have 5, you're getting 5 energy every second. If you're spending your 20 energy to cast your alacrity, you're going to be able to get it faster. You can account for the energy here, so you can overspend, not have enough to cast it if you've got 1 second. There's a lot of small skills where you can add them in because of that. The only states our energy can be in this build is -1 or +5 with the Demon Elite or Whirling Hammers.